Deep in the forests of North America, a creature is said to exist. A creature that people are encountering. With far too many reports to ignore, there are elements of truth behind these accounts that mankind can no longer ignore.
Breaking news out of Texas, Bigfoot is real.
Could a breeding population of large, upright, hairy hominids really exist in North America? Or is there something more paranormal at work here, deep in the woods? If just one footprint, one wood knock, or one howl is real, then man's understanding of primate evolution would be changed forever. Join the Catskill Appalachian Research Collective as they delve further into the mysteries of Bigfoot and other paranormal phenomena through the eyes of witnesses, investigators, critics, and skeptics. Join us as we look to discover what lurks from behind tall trees. All right, good evening and welcome to the Season 2 premiere of From Behind Tall Trees. It's been a long time coming, folks, and I am very good to be back. I'm Brendon Brown, the founder and director of the Catskill Appalachian Research Collective. We call it the C.A.R.C. Now, with me tonight, doing her very first live Sasquatch show is my lovely and charming co-host, Gwen Purcell. Gwen is having some connectivity issues right now, but she'll be joining us in a moment. This is a live show. We'd like to welcome everybody that's watching on Facebook and everybody that's watching on our YouTube C.A.R.C. Universal channel. This is the first live show of the season for us, so we're very excited. This is a super chat, so if you've got any questions at any time, don't be afraid to put them in the chat box, all caps, please, and we'll do our best to get them on the air. Tonight's guest, I'm so excited to have him tonight to kick off the season. Tonight's guest and his research group, the Bluff Creek Project, are responsible for the rediscovery of the Patterson-Gimlin film site and other notable wildlife projects around the area where he's from or where he currently lives. Not only did Rob document the adventure with the likes of Steve Stroyfert, Rowdy Kelly, Ian Carton, and others, but then he went out and wrote what I now consider one of the best true adventure books for Bigfoot researchers out there, the Bluff Creek Project, A Journey of Rediscovery. So without further ado, I would welcome my good friend now, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rob Leiterman. Good evening, Rob.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, how you doing,
how's
buddy?
It going?
Yeah. It's good to have you. Good to have you.
Just got done putting together. Good. Just got done finishing putting together some shelving, screwing in pipes and reading directions. And yeah, I just finished that before I started. It took a little longer, but.
Well, you know what? You're done on time. It's only 4:00 out there. We our show in the past used to start at 9 on the East Coast, which was very late. It was tough for me to do that. It's tough for people on the East Coast to watch that much, to watch it late, but it would have been a little bit easier time for you. So thanks for making the time to join us tonight. So Rob, let's for anybody that doesn't know who you are, for broad strokes here, just give us the unabridged version of the Rob Leiterman story.
Oh, the Rob Leiterman story. All right, let's see. I'm retired, and I'm busy now, more busy now than I'm retired. But I worked for Parks for many years. I retired from that. And the process of working for Parks, one of the things I did is do interpretive programming, which is we talk about natural and cultural history. We lead walks. We do a bunch of other things. So that kept us busy. And one of the things I did was for interpretation was a slide presentation on the Bigfoot phenomena. Mm-hmm. So I got the blessing from the department. Make sure I do that right. There we go. Got the blessing from the department, and we started doing interpretive programs, and that led to me eventually running into John Freitas, who showed up at the Humboldt Redwood Park on Labor Day weekend. That's one of the busiest times of year at the park. And he showed up. He had this big old speaker on the back of his pickup truck. It's like it said BFRO on it, Bigfoot Field Research Organization. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but so he asked me. He was very professional. He says, "Hey, I'm with the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, and there is a reported sighting over here up in the hills near in your park. And I was wondering if there was any way we can like, I've got the speaker, we can kind of blast sounds, alleged Bigfoot sounds into the park. Well, we have these endangered animals. You know, one of them is like a marble murrelet. It's a pelagic bird that spends part of its time out in the ocean and comes back and nests in ancient trees in the park. And there's a nesting period where we don't want to disturb them, and that's actually in the summer. And then there's the other animal, like a spotted owl, that also it was threatened, so they want to protect those as well. So we said, no, you can't do that, but I direct them places you can go do that. But then I went up later. I saw at the BFRO, because now I said, oh, who are these BFRO guys? And it's like, oh. So I had access to the BFRO. I saw it on I guess, internet, for lack of better words, because it wasn't Facebook back then. It was just like the internet. And so I looked it up, and they had these pictures, and they had some little write-up of their investigation. And I go, I should check that out. But I didn't get a chance to check it out until like September 23rd. So I finally had some downtime. And we're talking like what? Let me back up a little bit. The sighting that took place was in August 23rd. And it was a dad and his son. They were walking the river trail alongside the Burlington campground. And the kid's shoe came undone. So the dad stopped him and says, hey, tie your shoe. So while the son was tying his shoe, he was kind of looking around. And he saw what he described as is a naked halfway up of a large male moving back and forth through gaps in trees, and then stopped at a tree and scratched his back on the side of the tree. But that time he realized that didn't look right. He didn't look like a bear at all. So he had his son hurry up and finish his shoe, and they left the area. And they came back about 30 minutes later, saw nothing, talked to some of the seasonals, asked them what was going on. They said, you have any bears here? And they said, no, we don't have any bears, but we do have bears. But they usually don't go that close to the campground. And anyhow, so BFRO got involved with that, and they sent some investigators down, and they investigated it. It just happened to be on Labor Day weekend when John Freitas came down, and he had the speakers with the BFRO written on them. So they did some research, and then I saw the article. So that was probably right after Labor Day. They posted their investigation. I saw the article, and I go, I better go check it out. So a month later from the sighting is September 23rd-ish. I'm up there with another parkade of mine who's pretty good at tracking. So we went up there to go look for it. So you take a picture and you hold it up and you compare it with that area. We know our areas pretty well, so we were able to match the general location. And then we went looking, and we found trails. We found cigarette butt. We found a strap to a camera. And the report was the alleged Sasquatch was scratching his back against a tree. Well, I'm sorry, a stump. Well, we found that stump. It was an old burned out stump, which means it's all black. And on it moss was growing on it. So you can rub your finger on it and scratch off the moss real easy. So we figured if anything scratches back on the stump, there would be sign for it. So we didn't see any of that. And then I was looking around, and by this time in September, the redwood trees start dropping their leaves. So they're not deciduous. It's just that every 7 years, a lot of the conifers just shed some of their needles and grow some new ones. But it covers a lot of the trails. So you could tell there was a game trail, but it was covered up. And there was a little spur trail that kind of went off. I'm doing this wrong. It's like backing a car up right now. I have to make sure I'm pointing in the right direction. So looking off to it would have been my left, but I'm doing this. There he goes. Right. Totally opposite. Okay. And there was a spur trail that went to these 3 redwood trees, and they're probably about a 12-inch diameter. And the young redwoods have really soft bark. You can see where about a foot below, about a foot off the ground, to about 6 foot up, it looked like it had been rubbed. And I go, oh, that's interesting. But I wasn't thinking about Sasquatch hair, investigative techniques. I was just
because you've never done this before. This is your first crack at looking for. Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting to find anything anyway. I was expecting to go another misinterpretation of a bear. That happens a lot. But it didn't make sense as what they saw. So they weren't in the exact area, but yet the photographs reflected it. But then that spur trail, and I saw that spur trail that went in, and that go, oh. and something rubs from a foot to about 6 feet on one of the young redwood trees. And the bark was pushed in and pushed down. So it's real soft bark, so you can manipulate it. So something did scratch his back on that tree. So I go, huh. So I wrote it all up. I didn't do it for the department because they don't want us to write Sasquatch sightings.
No, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, I don't know why, entertainment value. Because the supervisor has to sign that, and then they sign it, they're probably going to look silly, so they don't want to do it. So I wrote it to the BFRO, Bigfoot Field Resource Organization, and I said, hey, just to let you know, I found the cigarette butt, and there was a tree rubbed in. So I just did my own follow-up, took some pictures, but my partner didn't want to be in any of the pictures, so I was in the pictures. So I'm on the hillside, standing in front of these trees that were rubbed against. I got one leg up, and I'm wearing my Stetson. Those are Rangers always wear those pretty hats, just like the Mounties. And I did that, hands out shot, right? Anyhow, I didn't know that was going to come back to haunt me, but we took about 4 shots, and then I added those with the article. So what happened is BFRO got a hold of it, of course, because I sent it to him. Matt really liked it, so he offered me a curatorship, and that's just a big long word. I had no idea what it really meant. So I asked him, what is that? He says, oh, well, you can investigate some of the reports. I go, sure, I'll do it. So I became a BFRO member about 1999, about December-ish. Anyhow,
well, that's not
before that a little bit.
That's not far. Yeah, that's not far. I think they formed the BFRO in 1997 or something like that. So this was the early days of the BFRO.
It's more like the Matt Maker started about either 94 or 95. So yes. Did you know that? I believe Lauren Coleman was also in the BFRO at one time. Yeah, another story. But so I got a chance to be curated with that. But going back to the report of that, so I got called in the office of the supervisor, and I got a cease and desist, written cease and desist. It says you are no longer going to be looking for Bigfoot on state time and yada yada. But remember, I mentioned before, I don't know if I did or not, but I was given interpretive programs, which meant I used state time to put together my interpretive programs.
Now,
so I was researching.
Real quick, Robert, for those who aren't familiar, interpretive programs are put on by the park, by park employees. Can you just real quick tell everybody what an interpretive program is, and then continue on?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
So an interpretive program would be like, let's say you want to do a nature walk. So people meet at a certain time, and you take them on a nature walk, and you stop and you explain the flora and fauna on your walk, natural cultural history. Or you can give a presentation with slide presentation around a campfire or tell stories. So the public shows up for these, and they don't have to sign up. They show up in the evenings or for campfires or daytimes for walks. Like towards the end of my career, I also gave tracking classes to the public, learning how to track things. I also did night hikes. So you got to walk around at night using night vision equipment just to see what night was like. And that was pretty cool. People like that. I would force them to not turn their lights on when it kind of got dark, because everybody's so afraid of the darkness. So they walk really close together, and they want lights on all the time. So the point is even though it gets dark in the forest, but there's gaps, you can see stars, was to get more comfortable in the darkness and listen and sit and see what you hear. And it was kind of cool. And after a while, people got used to that. So we also did paddles down the river. That was kind of a crazy thing for us because we're responsible for their safety. And we have people signing up over the phone. And it's like, hey, have you paddled? Oh, yeah, I'm an expert. I'll be cool. They show up, and it's like, okay, that's the pointy end. That goes down the river first, That's a paddle. You need to actually put it in the water and pull it, if you want to move down the river. So that was kind of scary, but that's an example of interpretive programming.
Okay, so you're given these, and then so go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm given one of these. This is more like I show a slide presentation, and I show the kind of the history of Bigfoot, so to speak. And my favorite was to start out with a bunch of tabloid magazines, because you couldn't be too serious about an interpretive program, because the Park Service gets a little leery of those things. Are you saying they exist? I want to have to answer those questions.
Right.
So I use a lot of humor, and I had my favorite tabloid magazines, like I had Bigfoot Babies, and all these other things. And I talk about it and have a lot of fun. And then I go through the process of developing the history, and then talk about the recent sightings. Of course, you always talk about the Ape Canyon. You always talk about the God, what's his name? Slipped my mind. The guy who was abducted. Oh, Albert Oatsman. He got abducted. Yeah. And those are fun stories, whether you believe them or not. They're entertaining, and so I'd go with that, and then towards the end, I'd answer questions about it, which is fun. And
so it sounds like
questions, people were kind of hesitant to ask questions.
So it sounds like you went all in
afterwards when there's nobody else to listen.
Well, you went all in.
Sorry,
so it sounds like you went all in after this first BFRO example, right? This first BFRO investigation you did. Now you're editing stuff. So I want to take out a 2-minute break here because I would like to bring in Gwen.
Sure.
Because Gwen is now there. You are there. She is.
Hi.
She's back. Ladies and gentlemen, Gwen Purcell is the newest member of the C.A.R.C. broadcast team. This is her first Bigfoot show. She had some connectivity issues, but now she's all in.
I'm all in. I'm all here.
Yeah, exactly. So Robert, you're a park ranger, and like I said, park rangers and Bigfoot don't really mix. So it's like you said, it sounds like they kind of were, the other employees giving you some shit at work as far as, oh, here's the Bigfoot guy, here's the Bigfoot guy.
Well, not all the employees did that. There's a few that would tease you, I expect to be teased. So there's a few that would do that, and there's also some that were interested in it. Like one of the rangers I work with who teased me a lot about it, but he would show up with his family to watch the programs. So even though I'm just adjusting here a little bit.
Yeah,
there we go. My head's bigger than both of yours, so I'm conscious about that. So self-conscious, so I'm trying to make it normal. Okay, here we go. Almost. Well, I got teased by it, but he did have some interesting. He had an interest in about it, but he was kind of skeptical, which is good to be skeptical. He eventually, but so it was good. It was good. Give me a little tease it a little bit, but expect it. But there's some who really like to follow it along, and they really enjoyed it, which I kind of like. But not everybody you work with is going to appreciate your sense of humor or your interest in that kind of subject. So be prepared to get the whole list of, I saw the show the other day, and they proved that there's this guy who used to own this timber company, building roads, and he faked all of it. So, he faked everything. So there's no such thing as a Bigfoot because on his deathbed, he admitted. Stories like that you always hear. So,
right. So, I was listening to, I think Gwen and I were listening to one of your shows. I think it was you run with the crowd, the Bluff Creek Project crowd, but you were on with Cliff and Bobo not too long ago, and that actually aired Monday. So first of all, great show. But it's, to be honest with you, those two guys see Bigfoot through a little bit more of a different lens than you do. It seems like, seems like you're a little bit more, your threshold for believability is much higher than theirs. What's it take to convince you that there's a Bigfoot, that there may be a Bigfoot? Have you I don't think you've had a sighting, have you?
No, I've never had a sighting. A sighting is you're sitting there and you look up and you see this big hairy thing and you're looking at it going, that's not a bear. Okay, that's a sighting. Hearing things you don't quite understand what you're hearing, or hearing knocks, or having trees fall down while you're there, or having things thrown at you, or smelling certain smells, and then things in association with all those is quite different than actual sitting there and seeing it. So working for the government for over 30 years, everything you say, if you represent the department. So if you said, oh yeah, I saw Bigfoot the other day, the department is going to go, oh yeah, you work for the parks, right? Okay, you're that crazy ranger, work for the parks. So well, I'll tell you a little story, I'll get back to that little story, but that helps explain the problems you deal with. So I am a little skeptical, but yet I use my skepticism to help me make a better decision on my investigations. So let's say I hear a tree knock, and because I've heard it twice at the park I work at, Humboldt Redwoods Park. Now, one of them was after search and rescue, right? So I stopped there. I set up there's a big open parking area, and it was late in the evening because they got lost, and then they hiked uphill, and then they called 911, right? That's exactly what you're supposed to do, right? You never went uphill away from your car, but now you're going to go uphill for about 3 miles, and then you're going to make a 911 call because it's getting dark. Yeah, why not? So we get called for search and rescues all the time. So I got the quad out and I parked it at Look Prairie area. And I was going to ride up the trail as far as I can get, looking for sign or looking for people huddled, because we knew kind of where they were, because you get a little ping from your 911 call if you stay in the same place. And so you kind of figure out where they're at. So there's different routes to get there. I chose Look Prairie to get there. And they had the other ranger I work with got to him quicker than I did, because he took another route and was covering the ridgetop. I was coming up this trail because you have like 3 options they can go, right? You guess, okay, you got that option, I'll take this option. And then if there's time, we'll hit a third option. So by the time I got up close to the location, they said, hey, never mind, Robert, we found them. All 4 are accounted for. You can go back. It's like, okay, great. So I got to ride my quad at night. Pretty cool. And then so I turn them around and I ride back down. I get to the car. But by that time I get down back to the car, they're pretty much Humboldt County Search and Rescue also gets called out for these rescues as well. They were just getting ready to pack up. They committed to the search, but the time they got there, it was pretty much over, which happens a lot. Anyhow, so it's good. They're found. Whether we find them or the Humboldt County Sheriff finds them, that's good. As long as they get found and we don't have to go looking for them later in the park or 6 months later in the park. So they all left and I just got back. I was getting ready to load my quad up and I talked to the other ranger. He goes, yeah, we're good. I go, you're taking off? He goes, yeah, I'll see you back at the office. Great. Okay. No problem. So I had to load my quad in the back of my pickup truck, and then you put your ramp, you secure the thing, you make sure it's all good. You warm your engine up, and then you get ready to take care of stuff. So I had turned my engine on, and I was just getting ready to go. And I said, don't dump your quad on the windy road. Better go back and check it one more time, because it hasn't happened to me, but it has happened to other people. You're tired. It's dark. You miss securing something and it shifts, and then you have a problem. So I got out of the car and I was going to go check it, and I hear this whack sound, less than probably about 50 to 100 feet up above me. I'm like, that was a knock. I'm like, whoa. So of course, what do? You wait, right? You wait, you're listening. I turn the engine off, because I want to hear it clearly. Sometimes you just pretend like it never happened, and maybe you'll hear something else. But once you turn the engine off and you're standing here like this, looking up into the hill with your flashlight, because I know I did shine the flashlight, because that's one of the etiquettes is don't just listen. So I pretend like I was like fumbling around, but I did turn the engine off to hear better. And I heard nothing after that. I was there for a good 15, 20 minutes. I get a call on the radio, goes, hey, we're waiting for you to get back. Right. So I can't just say, hey, I'm looking for Bigfoot right now. I'll get back to you. Let me go up the hillside in the dark and see if I can see Bigfoot up there. So everything's good. I drive back. So that's one of the occasions. Another one, I was hiking along the trail, and it was late in the day, and I was trying to get back to my unit. I'll get this. There we go. I was trying to get back to my unit, and it's just weird. It's always left and right.
Yeah.
So I was trying to get back to my unit, so I was walking the trails in the old growth forest area. And I walk that trail a lot. There's sections along there where you'll start smelling skunkish smell. We don't have a skunk cabbage growing there like they do in Redwood National State Parks to the north. But you smell like it sounds like skunk cabbage. But the bears do have a musty smell, and they do hang around there. So it's just kind of those things. So I'm walking along, and I pass this one section coming off the hill, and I make a sharp turn. And right before I cross the bridge, I hear another whack sound. And it sounds like it's coming from less than 50 feet away, up where the big redwood trees are. Of course, I sit there and I'm looking. I peek around one side. I peek around the other side. I see nothing. I smell nothing. And I don't hear anything. and it's getting late in the day. So if I don't hurry back to my vehicle, I'll be walking in the dark. So there's a limitation sometimes. So now there's 2 occasions where I heard this popping. It sounded like a knocking sound. Well, I got to thinking about that too. Maybe, just maybe, it could have been the tree, because trees, the large redwood trees, for instance, is they have this buttress crack that runs all the way up it because it shifts in the wind, and that's flexibility in the tree. There you go. That's flexibility in the tree. So if it moves, you can hear a loud popping sound, and that happens. Like in the wintertime in some areas where it's frozen, you get popping sounds from the trees there as well. I don't know if it was a knock. I don't know if it was a clap. I have no idea. I just know I heard the sound and saw nothing. So those are circumstantial situations. Right, so I've got others where tree failure. I was with Bart Patino, and
I wanted to ask you
because tree failure.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about, and I apologize for the delay. It's there's an audio delay, so sometimes I think you're done, and then I'm stepping on you. So there's a question. I'm not sure if this is one of your friends, but we have a comment here that says to tell them about being followed back to the berm. Would that be you, or is that somebody else?
It might be me.
Well, I don't know. I don't know
Here's
who that
another
is.
situation where it's, well, if I were to guess, I'd say it's Kip. But
okay,
Kip Morrill,
9-time Bigfoot of the year.
It's like you don't tell. Nighttime? Did you say nighttime Bigfoot of the year?
No, I would just go 9-time Bigfoot of the year. Yeah, there's an ongoing joke there.
That would be Kip Morrill.
Yeah, that's exactly.
That was Kip Morrill. Yeah, he's like in my circle. This is for Kip. Right? There you go, okay. Kip. There you go. There you go. Yeah, I love you, Kip.
So tell Kip's story.
So, okay. He wasn't involved in this story in particular, but what it was is I was walking down. First, I did. I'm staying at the berm on the old road 12 and 13H that goes down to the film site. But in 2010, because they're losing the road, in 2010 they bermed it off about a mile up. They pretty much half mile up. They burned it off. So you can't drive past it. So I'm camping there, waiting for other people to show up. This would have been probably 2 years now. So I hike all the way up because there's no cell reception there. So I try to force an exercise. So it's about 2.5 or 2 miles all the way back up to where you get cell reception. We call it pretty much a TTSP. SS. Anyway, I'll talk about that later. Anyhow, all the way up and just towards the top, you get cell reception. So you can check it with your significant other or call your friends and let them know you're still alive. So I went up there and made my calls. I was walking back down, still by myself. And I'm about a third, I'd say a half of the way down. And you start hearing some branch breaking, right? So when I was walking down, I had some ski poles. So as I'm walking down the road, I hear click, clack, click, clack. So that's me just putting them down and thinking about stuff. I get to a point where before that, you feel like you're being watched. Well, you are being watched because you're in a forest, right? There's a lot of animals watching you and you are the intruder. You know, you're in their living room and they're watching TV and you're it. And you seem to be on TV. So you're walking down the road and you click, click, click. And you're like, I'm probably being watched. And then I kept going down. And next thing you know, I hear what sounds like branch breaking or foot placements, right? Because the road going down on my right, as it goes up the hill, it's relatively steep. But there's the trees are laid out to a point where you could be on the road and you can look up, but you can't see anything. But you could be on the hillside looking down and see everybody just fine. So I was being followed or flanked by something that was making noise. Okay, I could hear it. So when you first hear the noise, first thing you want to do is, did I really hear that? So you stop, right? And now you're going to hear it listen, right? So I stop and I hear about 2 steps and it stops. You're like, no, that can't be happening. And you wait, you listen again, and you hear nothing. You okay? So you start walking again, right? You're walking again and everything's cool. You're like, oh, whew, imagination. And you hear it again, right? And so you stop, half step, and you hear a couple more steps, and like, there's something up there, and it's following or flanking, you know. And you're listening, you're hearing it. So now I'm looking, right? So now whatever it is knows I'm looking up, but I can't see anything. So first time I heard it was probably about a good I'll say about 40 yards. Then I hear it again. It's like about 30 yards. I'm like, that means it's paralleling me and I'm going downhill. It's going downhill as well. So not every animal uses the roads. It's easy, but if I'm there, it's probably not going to use the road. So it's just paralleling the roads. A lot of predators parallel game trails because that's how you sneak up on things. So now I know there's something there. So now I'm talking to myself, walking down, and I think if it's a bear, as long as the bear knows I'm there, maybe it'll avoid me. But it stopped when I stopped. So when I heard it the third time, it was closer yet. I just said, screw it. I am just going to keep walking. I'm walking down the hill. By the time I get almost to that big 270-degree turn to go on the left straightaway back down to the berm, I'm walking there and I can hear it. At that point, I'm going, I wonder what it is. So I went to the bottom of the turn. I stopped, took out my pepper spray, and I'm waiting. I'm going, okay, I'm going to see this. Because what we've done before is we are parallel. We make a big 180 basically. And now we're going the totally different direction, right? But that position, I can still look down that ravine because the road made the turn right before it went down a ravine. And whatever it was is going to have to drop down that ravine and I'm going to see it on the other side. Because this has happened before in different areas where you can double back and watch it, just like the cats do to you. And right where I expected to cross and drop down, it makes a 90-degree turn and starts walking right down to the edge of the turn where I am with my pepper spray in my hand going, it's coming down this way. So now it's walking down. It's picking up speed because it's downhill, right? I go, okay, time to go. So I just turn around, walked, no longer putting my stick poles down. I don't want to give away my location. I'm just walking, looking over my shoulder with my pepper spray in one hand and my 2 walking sticks in the other, looking over my shoulder, trying to go down the road. And it's just like, I stop and I listen and I hear nothing. It show's over. So the question was, what was that? And I don't know because I didn't see it. I didn't smell anything. I heard it walking. I stopped. It stopped twice. And when I made my turn heading down, it made a cut down. So it knows the terrain very well. So I walked the rest of the way, heading back to the site. And about probably a quarter mile before I got to the site, I hear what sounds like a vehicle driving down. Of course, these are the people I've been waiting for. As soon as they got there, I say, hey, how's it going? Did you guys see a bear? They're going, no, we didn't see a bear. I'm like, okay, never mind. Well, I'll see you guys back at camp. So they go driving past me. So I just walked a little faster going down until I get back up there. It's not every day you get to experience things like that, but sometimes it unnerves you and sometimes it's okay. That one kind of set me back a little bit because that's not the only weird thing that happens in that general area, but that was one of the things that all the behavior of that was not what I expected. Because I've heard bears before and they're really not that interested in you because humans bad, but some of them are if they're used to food or they're habituated. But we've experienced bears in the area before, and they have a trail that flanks the main road. And right where the berm is, there's another game trail farther up, and it frequents that. I'm going to flash back to another story. This is in the book. I talk about it in the book. But another position where I was with Steven Stroifer and Nadia, and it was June, and we're trying to see if the site's open to get to it. There was a log down pretty close to where I first heard whatever it was, where we parked the car. We walked all the way down, and I had my Sony camera attached to my chest. I'm like, I'm going to capture everything, right? And I didn't have it turned on because I don't waste the batteries, right? A silly answer. So we're walking out, we're chatting, and we get to a part which is actually pretty close to the berm. And this is 2011 in June. Walking down, and then we hear I hear something moving above me, right on my left, going downhill. So we stop. I got to stop everybody, and we're ready for it, right? So I flick on the camera, right? I'm going to catch this. And sure enough, you can hear it coming down. It's not as loud, it's soft. It's moving, and then you see the brush parting, but you can't see what it is. And it's coming down towards you, down the hill. And I got my camera on. I told you that. And I'm just watching this going, what is that? What is that? And then a fawn about that big,
Okay.
below your knees, comes running down the hill with all spots on it, and it runs right between us and continues down the road. And then it darts back up the hill. There's a brush. So you have a deer that's willing to spend time with you rather than spend time with whatever's coming behind it. So we go, something spooked it. So we're hanging there. I got nothing on film to prove it, but I'm watching it going, oh, that's just really cool. Nobody's going to believe this. Forgot I had a camera. I turned it on, right? But I didn't push the little button. Start it. Anyhow, while we're watching this fawn run down the hill and, going, hey, this is really cool, we hear something else. This is big. And it's the same direction that the fawn came from, and it's coming down the hill. It's not being quiet. It's just letting everybody know it's on and we look up, and sure enough, this bear comes crashing down the hill. It's like heading right for where we're at, but it's not even looking at us. It's just on the ground, following the same path the fawn took. So whatever people tell you that fawns don't have the scent and predators don't find it, this bear, one of the best sniffers in the business, was tracking pretty close to the same path that fawn did with his head down. And it was just going through the process of it. It got right to this one drop-off point, and I'm thinking, we should say something. Because as soon as I saw the bear, I backed up because there's some trees behind me, and Stephen and Nadia were still there going, this is pretty cool. So remember that camera that I actually turned on? I flicked it to stills. Okay, and I'm going to get it this time. I'm ready for it. So as soon as the bear poked his head up, I took a nice shot, one shot. And I didn't see it in the camera. And it almost dropped down towards us. I yelled, it stopped. It looked at us like, what are you doing? And it's looking for the fawn. And then it snorted at us and then looked at us. It wasn't happy. And then it went left, tracking parallel on the road again. So there is a game trail that the bears take that parallels the main road. And like a good predator, they would do that. So that just kind of elaboration of that, similar to the earlier thing. Almost in the same general area, the whole thing took place, but that was a bear. That was confirmed by the visual sighting, 2 other witnesses. But that whole incident was cool. Well, flashing back to that 2 years ago when I had that thing follow me, I got back to camp. From that point, we went down up to Scorpion Creek and a couple of things up Bluff Creek. And Jamie was pretty much at the camp, and so was Tate. I think Jamie was there at the time. Anyhow, while we're down there, there's all this noise going on. I hear that they call us up, say there's something stalking us above the campsite. So they had an experience of something breaking trees, pushing things down above their camp at the burn. Now, they didn't see it. They heard it. I didn't see it. So who knows what it really was. But I know originally we started talking about evidence and lack of sightings, but that's just some of the experiences that one experiences.
Wow.
It's just, I mean, I could go on with a bunch of other things I've experienced, but it's just like, that's not proof of a Bigfoot. That's proof of something was out there. And when I look at that, it's like, when you have an experience in an area that other people have experiences, does that justify your encounter? Does that make it more like a Bigfoot encounter if other people have experienced similar experiences? Well, like you go out banging trees or screaming and you get a tree banging back or a scream back. Was that instigated by yourself? And if your other people get the same thing, it's circumstantial, right? But it makes you think, like, what in the world is screaming or hitting trees? Like, I'll tell you another quick story too, because I like to tell stories, I guess.
Well, that's what we're here for, Rob. I mean, this is, if they're just joining us, we've got 2021 Bigfoot Times Bigfooter of the Year, Robert Leiterman, with us tonight. Rob's telling us some fascinating stories. So, Rob, continue on, my friend.
Good. I'll tell you another story with Bart Catino, and this invites Bobo too. Bobo lives near me, so I've known him since 1999, I guess, and he called me the Bigfoot Ranger, but he was also involved with the BFRO, so I got to go on some pretty cool stuff with him in the beginning, and we did the Shelby Car Club in like 2004, cool stuff. But I was going to go back to this one general area, undisclosed. This is a few years ago, where Bobo and Bart were on this one section in the redwoods. They were out there in the wintertime, and they had some knocks and some noises, and they were surrounded by this, and they left the area. They left a recorder on a tarp as they left. Well, 1 month later, I'm up with Bart and myself in the same general area, and we got in before the sun went down, because if you're going to go anywhere, you should know where the dangerous spots are and pick your terrain properly. So we went in there, we picked it out, we knew where we were, we got into position, we waited till it got dark, then we have our procedures. We'll do a call, we'll wait. We'll do a knock, we'll wait. And we'll listen. We'll listen to what's going on around us. So we were in position. We did our first series of knocks and calls. We tried to do, I think we had like 7 minutes in between them. So we do our last knock or call. I can't remember which one. And then we do another one. We do it. Okay, here we go. 7 minutes have gone by. Let's do something real quick. So we do either this time it was a knock or call. We did one of each. So we did it. I'll just say it's a knock just to start with. So we do this knock and we're listening. Within 3 minutes, we think we hear this knock come back. It's like, did you hear that? Yeah. And Bart runs a digital recorder, so it's all recorded. I'm running I finally figured out how to keep my camera on, So I have my night vision on. I'm looking all over the place. And we hear this. That's a knock. Yeah, that was a knock. And sometimes if you hear a single knock, you can't really figure out where it is. So you kind of want something to knock several times like a woodpecker, right? And it's over there. So you hear the knock. Now we're listening. But we know we did 7 minutes, did something, 3 minutes, response. Cool. We wait. We listen. We keep recording. Hear nothing different. 7 minutes after last time we heard something, we do, I think it was a yell this time. Within 3 minutes, a tree above us off to our left falls down. Okay. I say it fell down. Bart says it was destroyed by something. So I talked this before on the other podcasts, is that I always look at things as a skeptic. So I will say the tree fell down, because it did fall down. Bart was there. I was there. He doesn't understand why I don't understand why it was pushed down, because I didn't see it. We only heard it. But so his perspective was a little bit different. So going back to the story, so 7, within 3, 7, we do a call or knock again. Within 3 minutes, a tree above us. I'm like, that was clear. So that's recorded with cameras all over the place, trying to see anything in the dark with the night vision. He's running the therm, can't see anything. I'm running night vision, can't see anything. It's a dark forest. When it gets too dark, your night vision needs ambient light. So if you run infrared, then you're basically using a flashlight that low light animals can see, the beam for flashlights, because I have a digital camera. When I go to check the cameras in the park, the game cameras, looking for bad guys, is I check them in the evening time with my digital camera, and I activate it and I can see the light going with the digital camera, but I can't see with my eyes. So we're checking cameras with that, some of the older stuff. But anyhow, so we're like, what is this? So we're stoked. So first thing we want to do is we're macho. We're not going anywhere. You can't scare us. We're staying right here. I was like, meantime, our heart's going. We're staying right here. We're not going anywhere. I think when I look, and then of course the show was over. Nothing happened after that. But I think about it, because we go a month before that where Bart and Bobo had put a digital recorder on a tarp and they left. They came back to retrieve it. They heard footsteps in that area around the tarp. If we would have just put the digital cameras and the digital recorders, kind of cover the red light, walk away, we would have had something, maybe a little more evidence. But that's the thing, is if you're going to be brave about it and hang there, you might end the show. The deal was to get you to leave, right? Well, we didn't go anywhere. So what's next? Rock throwing at us? I don't know, running us over? I mean, who knows? But that's just another example of an experience that you go off your checklist. Wasn't a woodpecker, wasn't this. Of course, we've been there many, many, many hours, and we don't hear trees fall over that often. But what is the coincidence of you doing something, and within 3 minutes, something else happens, and you wait a period of time, and then you do something, and within the same time frame, something else happens in an area that has other activities and history. So we can assume it's a Bigfoot creature, right? But we're assuming we haven't seen it. We just hear. And one time I was up there with Bobo, the same general area, and we had cooked bacon. It's fun to go out with Bobo because he always loves his bacon, so it's cool. So you cook the bacon, you eat the bacon. You cook the bacon, you eat the bacon. And you have somebody else you could share with them if you want. But at night, all the smells go downhill. So you're up in your hidey up the side of the hill, trying to draw attention to something that's down in the swamp area to get an interest in you. Well, while we were doing this, we got this sound. It kind of like a, it's like, what is that? So we're half asleep, back to back. We hear that. Robert's awake. Bobo's awake. I look at Bobo and go, what is that? And I expect Bobo to say, oh, that's like a Sasquatch. It's called samurai talk. It happens all the time. No, it's like, what is that? I don't know. So I'm unnerved by this. It's like, this is weird. But a few months before that, the first BFO expedition, I got the great opportunity to organize the first one for the public, right? I want to say 2003. It was fun. Well, we were in same general area doing this expedition, and stuff happens. And it's just a point where you're like, this area has a lot of activity in it, and to a point where it could be just about anything. Because we've had that time with the samurai talk. 2 days before that, we took the Shelby Car Club into this area, and we had activity. It was like Bobo went up the trail with a group, and they heard a bunch of crazy stuff going on. And then they came out, and their eyes were like this big. And they told us what was going on. We heard it on the radios. It sounded like they were like overrun. So we went in there thinking, oh, good, it's our turn. All we heard were owls. They heard everything. And the rest of the night was quiet. The next day, we went in there looking for sign, right? So we found foot impressions, 3 different sizes in the swamp area, pretty close to where they had their experience. And I was looking at these foot impressions going, who would let their kid run all the way through the swamp bottoms here? And the ones on the other side were bigger than the average person ones. So speculation, whose tracks were those? But that's association with an activity that took place the night before. And then the experience about the samurai talk, that was like the last night, Sunday night of the program. That's what happened with that. But I remember going back to the first time I was organized the BFR one for the public. I had guest speakers come in. I had Ron Moorhead and I think it was, I want to say Dave Barry, but they were both there. And they gave a presentation and they played the sounds. And they talked about it. Of course, I was listening to this and I was trying to help them sell things because, I go, I could do that. So that's 9 months before I'm sitting there with Bobo on this hillside, hearing samurai talk with my own ears, trying to figure out what the heck is that? So that makes you think about it. And I had a bunch of stuff with Bo, which is kind of cool, and with Bart. And I did a little bit with Cliff in the early times when he was with BFRO. So again, going back to your earlier question, there's all these things that happen, and I want to prove beyond reasonable doubt that it is something, but I get a lot of circumstantial stuff and things I can't explain. I wouldn't know where to start with that. It's like, I know the basic animals and behaviors and everything else. Sorry.
Well, so Robert, would you still say are you still a skeptic, or do you believe? Well, with all your experiences.
I don't want to start a religious talk about believing in that kind of thing, but there is something out there that I can't explain. I can explain a lot of other activity and behaviors. So I'm not going to say I believe 100% because when I see it, sign me up. Bart has a thermal sighting. He's had 2. He has one recorded and that I helped investigate in the Sierra Kill site, and the other one he had in Washington. Okay, he's a believer, and he's seen it. So in his mind, he's got all those blocks checked. I'm looking for that one more block check. They're seeing something. You can see in foot impressions, they kind of look like Sasquatches, but then it kind of look like bears, but then show me the other tracks, not just one, and let's look at that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be skeptical in order to be a good investigator. If I just say, oh, Bigfoot's out there. Oh, it's a Bigfoot. Because I've gone with a lot of people who do research. And yeah, after a while, it's circumstantial, therefore it is. But I still want to not be so quick to go out the draw. So I do believe there's something out there. And the question is what? And we have to prove it. I might annoy some people by saying that, but imagine working for the government for 30 years.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because there's so many times you'll get people into the BFRO, and I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying, we've had a fair amount of people on the show, and people end up getting they for lack of using a 90s term, they drink the Kool-Aid, right? Suddenly everything is freaking Bigfoot. They look through, they're looking through the lens where every acorn that drops out of a tree is a pebble thrown. Every cracked wood is a wood knock, and that's not doing the research any help at all. If you guys are just joining us, you're late. And we've got Bigfooter of the Year, Robert Leiterman, on here. Robert, I want to shift gears because the time is flying by, and I don't want to cut short talking about your latest adventure. So like I said in the beginning, you and the Bluff Creek Project guys, not only did you videotape and document the trip to the PG site, but you also wrote this thing here, which is right here, the Bluff Creek Project book. So congratulations on it.
Thank you. I recognize that. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It must have been a labor of love, because it was well over 600 pages, and I enjoyed it. It really was very well written. If anybody, I will put a link in the description on where to pick that book up. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Bluff. Let's talk about the Bluff Creek Project, how that got started. With figuring out the trip to the Hot Pockets are done.
Yeah, actually, I don't know what that is. It's a haunted kitchen. It just.
So let's. It did. It sounded like the Pop-Tarts are done. Check the toaster oven. So let's talk about. Yeah, let's talk about how the Bluff Creek Project got started. In broad strokes, and then we'll move along to I've got a ton of questions that are backed up that we want to get to about that project. So let's take us to 2000 whatever it was when you guys started the destination to find the PG site.
Sure. Before I do that, could you put that picture of the cover back on one more time?
I sure can. There it is.
All right. See, the cover was designed by Rowdy Kelly and his wife, and if you look at it, do you see the Sasquatch in the mist?
I don't. Is it supposed to be in the shadows?
It's actually the clearest part of the cover, and the shadows are outlining it. You see it?
Let me bring it back up again.
Yeah.
I see it.
The
there
mist,
it is.
I'm going to look at the freaking thing here at my house.
I could put a red circle around it if you want me to.
No, we don't do red circles. Oh, I see what you're talking about. Okay, yes.
Mm-hmm.
We try not to do red circles around here. So,
yeah.
So tell us about the book. Yes. We got to get like the Fox Sports where you can draw on the screen, right?
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, I just go like this, and it's like, yeah. So, well, my involvement with the Bluff Creek Project started. I'd say it started originally mentioned to me in 2007. It was the 40th anniversary, and it was in Willow Creek. And it was like Tom Yamaron had organized this, and it was the 40th. And I got to meet Stephen Streufert. And Stephen was a local reporter, and he was writing an article on the Bigfoot phenomena. So I got to meet him. I was this paparazzi guy. I was over there pretty much pointing out, oh, that's Bobo, that's Matt Moneymaker. That was my job, because we had the California crew through the BFRO, which were a bunch of guys that were in California following up on reports. So we call ourselves the California crew. Actually, I think Matt called us the California crew. But that was my first meeting. And then we went to Laos camp after the festivities. And I sat with Steven around the campfire. And we talked late into the night, which is an activity we still do today. Yeah, we had a nice little chat around the fire. And he was talking about, they don't know where that exact film site is. They're all confused about it. I go, really? And it wasn't until 2003 is when I first got involved with, I guess, more into the Bigfoot phenomena, because I went to the International Bigfoot Symposium, and I was the salmon and lunch talker. I was giving a guest talk about the same program I give to the parks at the time. It was at the elementary school. I got to meet all the players. I get to watch them and drool and say, "Oh, look, who's that guy with the cowboy hat? Oh, that's Bob Gimlin. Who? Oh, he was the guy on the horse. What? Remember those guys? Oh, he's just one of the cowboys." So I didn't really recognize him at all. But I saw Green. I got to talk to Green. Christopher Murphy at the top of the bleachers. He showed me all the stuff that was going to be in his book in 2004, I think it was. So that was pretty cool. So when I got to meet Steven in 2007, he mentioned that. So 2007 goes to 2008, then goes to 2009. And about 2010, I decided, yeah, that'd be worth checking into. And so what it was basically, I was doing a bunch of videos on different things. And so on my video research, I was pretty much interviewing people, investigating sightings. And we did a lot of stuff with Bart, a lot of investigation, which is pretty cool. And it got to a point where we decided, okay, let's just go ahead and do this. So I talked to Steven. I go, yeah, could I record you guys investigating where the film site was? Because at this point, I don't know much about the film site. I just know that there's this picture in the beer commercial. This thing's walking and it's holding a beer in his hand. And I remember seeing that. Go, yeah, oh, that one. Okay. The 357, the 352 shot with the beer. So I show up in 2010 at Steven's store just to videotape and listen to them talk about it, just to get the research. So it's like going to a mini symposium. I got my camera running. Stevens has this outline. He's doing a bunch of blogs, and I'm learning the whole time. He has it laid out like a blog exercise, and I'm filming it. I'm going, well, this is pretty cool. What do you mean they don't know where it is? And find out there's like 5 different names for different sites that people are confused about. And I go, okay, cool. And later on, I got to meet this guy named Ian Carton. I guess it's okay to say his name now. Before, he was teaching, and he wanted to keep his job, so it was just Ian. So I probably ruined his job now, but that's sorry. About that,
I said his last name in the intro, so it's completely fine.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good. So those are the first 2 guys who actually at the Yakima gathering. I got to go to that. I got to go with Bart. We drove from he drove from Monterey, picked me up in Humboldt County. I drove with him all the way to Yakima, Washington. And when we arrived at the place, it was like being with a celebrity. He drove up in his white Lexus, and I'm just sitting here going like this because everybody's waving at Bart. Everybody knows him. Every once in a while, I recognize somebody I know. And so that was my first exposure to all these different people that are really into the whole process of this, which is kind of cool. And that was still before I decided to be serious about the investigations about it. But anyhow, so we start recording things. And as the process moves along, I start getting more involved because I start asking questions. Because it's like when you interview me and you want me to talk about something, you have to ask certain questions. And then, so I'm asking him questions so I can get more information. So pretty soon it was like, I am now a zealot and I'm looking into the film site. So I now become the 3rd member of the Bluff Creek Project. And in this process, I did videos, 72 videos, about anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes, edited down, where we were letting people know the process of our investigation.
Right. Yeah.
Some people say, yeah, it looks like you.
Ongoing investigation. I mean, this took years, correct?
Yeah, well, it took about 2 years, pretty much. We had an extra year just to be certain, be safe. But yeah, we document the whole process. As if people say, you guys look like you guys lost. I go, well, we weren't lost. We were just confused because we're looking for this place. And there's a couple of people who watched every one of those 72 videos. Yeah. There. That's I pause there for that. And it was cool. They're close friends now. And it was neat to do that. When I wrote the book, I went through all the video footage to figure out how can you match the dialogue. So, Robert, did you make up all the dialogue? And the answer is no. I suffered through watching my videos, writing down what was said to help explain what was going on. So that's in the book as well. So it's almost like a journal. So the book is designed to be like a journal. you progress along with this. You get to know what's in our heads. You can find out that we're not all 100% believers. You find out that part of us had preconceived ideas where they thought it should have been.
Right.
And I had no preconceived ideas at all. So I was like the third person. So if Steven wants to go upriver, here we go. And Jamie wants, not Jamie, Ian wants to go downriver. We vote and let's go upriver. So that got annoying for Ian after a while. And so there was a point in the process where we got annoyed by each other's where we thought it was, but we're still good. We're still good friends. We haven't killed each other yet. We're still good friends. But part of the process was we worked as a team, and we weren't always happy with the decisions made, but we were team members, so we went along with the rest of the team. And we had 5 locations to choose from. We had what we're calling the Imca Dave site, which is the farthest site downstream. Then you move upstream and you got the Peter Byrne location. It's where you used to be able to drive and park your car, look at the bat boxes, and look at the big fir tree with all the woodpecker spots in it. And then you go farther upstream, you have an area we call the Christopher Murphy site, because when National Geographic came down and they did their scan, well, they got the information from other people. And one of them was Christopher Murphy, who thought that was pretty much the general location. And it was so washed out and tore apart that you couldn't tell much. But you got to have a width and a length. And the 352 is a northern shot. You have to fit that in. And then you need these big trees in the background. So did these trees wash away? Because there's a landslide just downstream from it. So all these factors you had to play in. Then you move up, and we gave this one the Daniel Perez site. He doesn't always agree with it, but he was seen lurking in that area, quote unquote, by Ian, that we call it the Perez site. And then you go farther north and we call it what they call the Cliff Barackman site, because we asked Cliff where he thought it was. And he circled a section on the map, which is very similar to where Renee put an X that we got from Daniel Perez. So those were our 5 locations that we decided to investigate. So you start at the farthest one downstream, and then you apply the same concept of it. Like, okay, Dehinden 71 shows a bunch of logs and trees and stumps. Okay, the pictures of the film show these trees in the background. So those are your evidence, and you try to apply it to every site. Well, imagine the area's being overgrown with the forest, which means
while you're talking, I'm going to bring up a picture of that. So you keep talking, and I'm going to show what you guys were dealing with on the ground level.
Yeah, it was hard to see. Yeah, just off to the left is, God, now we're going by memory there. That looks like the leaning stump, which is on the left-hand side, which means there's a leaning stump, there's a big stump, and then off to the right is the smiley face stumps, which you can't see. Some stumps, when you got in the bushes and crawled under a lot of stuff, you started seeing some of these artifacts, which were difficult to get. Yeah, the one you just saw is off the scene here. It's way out to the far left. Yeah, it's just off the thing.
Sorry. Yeah, so I'll just bring these up as you're talking, because to show people what you guys were up against. Because I mean, talk about not seeing the forest for the trees. Good Lord.
Yeah, well, this is the 352 shot, as you can see it, and those alphabet letters all signify something. Like A is the big tree, B is the maple. I'm sorry, A, small a is the maple. Then you go over a little bit further and you run into the middle tree. Then you go a little bit over. C is the spiky snag. That is basically, it's broken off at the top. It's shorter now. That's in the shot. And then you have the ladder tree, which is D, which has those branches you can see working your way up. And then there's baby D. And baby D are 2 trees. It's the lower and hardy tree that I got. See what happens, you get over 60, you can't remember stuff. Bill Muntz called it the lower and hardy tree. And we didn't need those to find the place, but that was the ace in the hole when we bite them up in 2012. Anyhow, so, and then the stumps ahead of time, there's a smiley stump, which lines up with the snag in 352. Now here we go. So these are after we did our grid, and all those circles are also circled on a copy of Dehinden 71, his aerial photo. So we circled them, we gave them alphabetical letters, and then we try to match them on both of those. And that was the whole idea of it. So if this was a forested site where you can't see anything, you're not going to be able to stand on the hillside like Renee did in 71 and take this photo. We thought about it. We thought, well, let's come up in the wintertime where all the deciduous trees drop all their leaves. Well, guess what? There's more firs than deciduous trees there. So that doesn't work. So the idea of us gridding it was a north-south axis, east-west axis, and make it 30-foot squares, and then draw in the artifacts, which stumps, logs, things that are there that you could see. So we drew them in, and then we tried to figure out how close were they in those 30-foot squares. So we estimated approximately. What we wanted is we wanted to take a 71 picture, put it north-south axis, and just match our other north-south and circle the ones that were similar and give them matching letters. So we did that towards the end of 2011.
Now,
and Stephen was ready to take the red pill. Rowdy was ready to take the red pill. Ian was a little conservative about it. He was no longer with us on the last part of that because he had family obligations to take care of. And I was like, I need more. Like, here's that skeptical side of me that says, if you jump too quickly and agree with things, then what if you're wrong? So I was the holdout. I just want to make sure.
So the question here from Joe K, what was the first landmark identified at the Patty Film site when it was rediscovered? When did the bells ring? I read the book, so I know what happens, but why don't you give them I want people to buy the book, but you just give us a little taste of when you guys said, holy shit, I think we're finally in the right spot.
Well, it's like, I think it was at the end of 2010, we're standing by the big massive roots, and I'm looking down at what we know is Dehinden's X, because the north-south bowling alley makes a 90-degree turn and there's another 90. That looks so familiar. That's the same general area where Bob Gimlin says, I think this looks familiar. It's just like, that could be it. And when I was standing there looking down at it, in my head, it says, yeah, that could be it. But you can't see all this other stuff because it's all covered with forest. You can't match any of the stumps very well. So that was the end of 2010. We saw a few stumps in there, and that's when we decided. We've already looked at the Peter Burns site. We already looked at the Perez site. We already looked at the MK Davis site. We already looked at the Christopher Murphy site. We decided this one we're going to grid. So we saw some things in there. I think the biggest pushing point was when we did our north-south line, and we're going with the compass bearings. Rowdy and I are taking a north bearing and a south bearing in double correction on a Ranger Silva compass, which is just a compass with a mirror, and you use that mirror to reflect down on the round part of the compass. And you're lining it up. You have slightly a declination correction, and you're sighting in on it. We went all the way back after 300 something feet. We run into this, I don't know, this big tree, right? Just off to the left. And we hit this maple tree. And so we did our 300 something feet, and we're sitting there going, okay, now we have to find the middle and put an east-west line. So Rowdy's looking at this big tree. Steven's looking at this big tree. And they're going, like Rowdy's going, look at the crook in the maple. Look at this big tree. Look at these other trees. So at that point, they're going, this is probably it. I'm going, it looks good, but let's make sure. So that was probably right when we're doing the grid, to a point towards the end of, I would say, October of 2011. Although Steven was buying and drinking the punch and shoving the red pill down a little sooner than that. But Rowdy had joined us for that period of time, so that was a new exposure for him. Yes.
Was there ever a time when you guys thought we're never going to find this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Was there ever a time when you wondered if you were ever going to find it?
There's a delay. Hang on a second,
yes.
Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a delay.
Okay.
Okay, so Robert, go ahead and answer the question, Robert, now.
Yes, there was. I'm a stubborn guy, and people tell you can't do these things all the time. And I guess I'm pig-headed. I get that from my mom and my dad. They're stubborn about things, but I've had it was a tough growing up in terms of educational system, where the people always tell you're not going to amount to much if you don't do well in school. And I don't even think about doing that because you don't have it. So I've been fighting that from day one. So every time somebody tells me that you're not going to be able to do it, I go, oh yeah, watch this. But when we got there, you're looking at all this jungle, and you're like, how in the world are we supposed to find anything in here? It's Forest Service land. We can't just clear cut it and find anything. So, and I'm thinking, how many years is this going to take? Is this going to take like 5 years? But we started looking at all the evidence and looking for the artifacts and finding a better way to grid a place and search in an area. And that's why we did the 30-foot squares. But yeah, there was a point where it says, oh, this is going to take a long time. And then surprisingly, we're starting to see things when we're cutting our little survey line right down the north. Oh, I'm going to regress just real quick. Yeah. When Finding Bigfoot was in the Tehenda's X area and they were filming Bobo walking on the edge of the creek, they didn't film inside because it was too dark. So all you got to see was that. But we were pretty close to the same area they were doing that. And when Bill Munns came down in 2012 and he figured out where Roger's frame number 1 position was, it was about 32 feet-ish from where we started our grid. So that's pretty cool. Wow. It was just behind us where Roger's frame 1 position was. And it was kind of close to the north axis. So going our little tunnel, getting the sight bearings all the way through, we were saying, hey, what's that? Is that a stump? There's a stump. You would have never found it unless you remove just enough to do your survey work. You start seeing these artifacts along the way. So now we're going, hey, this is looking really good. Now we're going, I think we can do this. And then, of course, Robert's going, don't jump to conclusions yet. Let's just make sure we're sure. And so I wanted to make sure I could compare these to do it. There's other people, like not to pick on Inky Davis, but he still thinks his location's the site.
Yes, I know.
We looked it over. There was orange flagging when we checked it out. There's a log that could have been the log, but it's not the log. There's different terraces in that place. There's stumps, but they're on different terraces. We want a flat surface. There's these 4 amigos, I call them, off to the left. They're basically there's trees that you see at the Hindon 71 when you look to the west side. Those were there, but you didn't have the big trees in the north access point. You had multiple terraces. The root balls were in the different location. So you have the elements, but they weren't where they're supposed to be. So we went through that. So it's like way up downstream it is, but that's what we're shooting for. So our survey, you see where the R and the S is? We were just to the left of that, heading towards the big tree area, which is basically circled. You can't see very well. I'm sorry. No, I take it back. Far to the right is where the big tree is. Those are the 4 amigos. You see at top of the center screen. And north-south runs from the bottom left to the upper right corner of that shot. And those are artifacts. Those are rotting places. Like, go ahead and flash that back up one more time. Yep. You see where O is? O is on the right above N. I fell into that root hole right there. Mm-hmm. We were doing our grid line. I stepped into this place where the root was decayed, and I fell down to my knee, and my knee was bugging me, and that wasn't fun. And I didn't know, but eventually that became the Mr. O there. That's an artifact that we found. That, yep. We didn't even know it was there because a lot of them were rotted out, as you can see.
That's right, almost in the center of the screen there.
Yeah, there it is. And you go just above that. Sorry to take that. If you would put it back on one more time. Okay. Right above that, there's E. There's a logs and there's some stumps. That is where Smiley Stump is.
Okay.
Just to give you a general idea of what's going on with that.
Smiley Stump Smiley Stump is a big character in the book.
If you haven't, it's a major character because it is in 352. It is directly lined up with the snag in the background.
There you go, right there.
There it is. And see, Smiley Stump is C. Snag is big C. The little C is the Smiley Stump. Okay. When you line up distances, that is what you're trying to line up. And our center line, where we did our north axis, was just to the left. We ended up with little a. Little a is the maple. So we were just to the left of that when we did our line. And which is kind of interesting because a lot of that stuff is overgrown, rotting piles with forest around it. And those so-called dead snags that you see, they are no longer dead snags. They're gone. Those are alders, and they're fertilizer. There's there's the sand, and there's a little bit of organic material in a lot of places on that. So when you're looking for artifacts, you kind of dig a little bit, and if you keep hitting organic material, you know it was a log pile. If you don't, then it's not. It's just decaying on top of the surface. So
now, let me ask you.
It was like a science project.
Yeah, let me jump in on that. So, now was anybody? You don't have any surveyors on the group, do you? There's no Army Corps of Engineers. There's no National Geographic had helicopters and all sorts of resources. No. You guys were just three guys trying to find the site in the woods and using your brain and what you have through the records, right?
Yeah, I'd say there's four of us originally.
I'm sorry, four of you.
Yeah. Well, I took a forest engineering class at Humboldt State. I was a forestry major until I took that class. And then I got an F in it, and we couldn't even connect our little triangle and get to the right spot. And that's a failure. So, but I knew the basic concept of a surveying is basically you get a compass bearing and you line that baby up and you head that direction. If there's a tree in your way and you can't see, you have to take a 90-degree turn, move around that tree, go up, and then go 90 back to the back on your main trail again and continue. Now, to double check that, you have to do a back bearing to make sure in a straight line. So we knew that much about it. And so that wasn't hard to do at all, because like at work, we check our park boundaries. So we're always running bearings to make sure we're not getting trespass. And I'm not a surveyor. I'm not surveyor trained, but I did the basics for what we needed. All we needed was to get approximately a north-south axis with correct declination for the area. By the way, it's changed over the last 20 years. The declination is changing. The magnetic north is moving somewhere else. But anyhow, so we got that down, and we just got to stay online with it. That was the hardest part. And that's why it was great having Rowdy as my buddy on that, because we shot the line, we marked it. Here we go, right here. 2 points form a line, right? 3 points form a direction. So if you can line up 3 of these fingers, then you know you're heading the right way. So this is not going to reach my nose, right? But if I have the 3rd point with my nose, I can line that up here. It's like FSTs right now. I'm trying to do this right. Then you know you have a straight line. And once you get your line going, then you double check it by checking backwards. So we were good enough to do what we wanted to do. And no, we haven't surveyed it. Surveyors don't want to go down there and cross the thing. You need a benchmark starting position that you know what it is. And then you can cash in from that benchmark to another location to make sure you're on the right part. I don't think there's very many of that up there. So I don't think it's necessary to do that, because we know where it is now. We GPSed it.
Right.
Someday the GPS system's not going to work. And maybe another flood will come through it, cover everything back up with some sand.
And you'll have to do it all over again.
All the stumps for us. Yeah, but now I don't think it's going to be us. It's going to be the next generations of zealots that think this is pretty cool to go tromping through the woods looking for landmarks, which is pretty fun, I have to admit.
Got a question for you, Rob, real quick on this one. Would you, if you had it all over to do again, right? You could start over. What would you have done different? I mean, this sounds like such a softball question, but what would you have done that maybe you could have shaved off a month or two, or you said, you know what, if we had it all over to do again, we should have done that?
Start at one end and just cutting all the small trees you don't have to do until you find the stumps, and then cut all the other trees off. Now, we wouldn't have done that, but that would have been the easiest way to find it is, let's clear cut this place off, but leave the stumps. But you can't do that. It's government land, and it's a riparian corridor. You have to protect it. And so that's not the answer to it. But I would like to start sooner on that one. Instead of starting at the MK Davis site, start at the Cliff Brackman site, because it made the most sense. But if you want to be fair and impartial, you have to give every site the equal time. But the problem we run into is, in my back of my mind, the back would be back of my mind, is I wanted to do grid search on every single one of them just to prove beyond reasonable doubt that it's not it. But that's a waste of time. If you know which one it is, then that's the one you spend your time on. Right. But we were told we'll never find it. We had people who were pretty sure we were wrong. And we had people that weren't convinced that we knew what we were doing. And I've had close friends to say, hey, you're never going to find it. Why are you wasting your time? It's like, there's the naysayer.
Those are good friends, right? Great friends.
They just, I guess they're trying to save me from all the torture that's going to happen. Well, here's a prime example. I like to write now, but I was never the best speller. English, math, and reading. I was special ed for that. I was always slow reading. I can't spell very well. And I had to learn all these things. So I've come a long way, by the way. But I remember my Mr. Montgomery was my English teacher, and he had suggested this reading assignment, a writing assignment. And we were supposed to write a story, bring it to class, and then he was going to grade us on it. Well, I already know I was dysfunctional in the English language. So I had my brother edit it for me. So I wrote a story about this kid was hunting in the woods, and he saw a Sasquatch. He got scared. He dropped his gun, and then he ran into a tree, and he woke up hours later by his house. That was the story. I don't have it anymore, but anyhow, that was the story. So I submitted that. And so Mr. Montgomery collects all the papers, and he gets to mine, and he's passing them back, and he gives me mine. There's a big F on it for fantastic. And he says, well, I can't accept this. This isn't your work. I go, but I kind of wrote it. I had my brother help me. So if Mr. Montgomery would have said, okay, let's do this again, but this time don't have your brother edit it, I'll work with you. But that never happened. So wanting to be a writer, but not really knowing what to do about it, it's like a bad grammar all the way through, run-on sentences. But it's the imagination, it's the storytelling that I liked. And it wasn't until years later that I worked on it. Even as a law enforcement officer, as a ranger, I went through FTO. FTO is field training program. So you get about 3 months to get it together, right? So they'll watch you. First you watch them for a shadow week, where they do everything and you watch and take notes. And then they start making you do stuff. And then every week they have this checkoff list. Yes, he actually wrote a report. Yes, he actually stopped the car, parked it, whatever. So they kind of rate you, and it's to help you get to be a good officer. Well, after about 3 months, you get the big powwow with all the other bosses, right? And then they critique you, says, are you worthy to be a park ranger? And then everything else was really cool, except when I got to the report writing. And they said, you are so good, Robert. We're going to extend you a whole month. So I learned that if I wrote down on a piece of paper the 10 words I always use spelled correctly, then I would spell them correctly. So it took them 3 months to tell me that. But in the old days, when you didn't write your reports on computers, you wrote them by hand on a form. If you made mistakes, they circled them, just like a good teacher. And you rewrote the thing over and over till you got it right. That was the old days. So they good for spell check and all this other cool stuff. But yeah, so writing wasn't always the greatest thing for me. I'm still learning. I'm getting better. I'm working on all the things. So for this book, Stephen did the editing for it, right, which I really appreciate. And he spent a lot of time going over my stuff. He didn't try to change what I was writing. He just tried to make it make sense. So it was good having Stephen on. And he also edited another book for me, the Gabriel's Legacy, which is actually published. It's out right now. It's a fictional book. Yeah, it's just fiction. I like to write fiction. I like to tell stories.
We talked about that. You've written 8 books, right? A total of 8?
Well, 9 if you count the Gabriel's Legacy, which is pretty recent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my earlier books, the Bigfoot trilogy, came out in 2000. So I wrote 3 books, Bigfoot Mystery, then Yeti or Not, Here We Come, and then Operation Redwood Quest. And there are kind of 3 books that talk about park rangering, dealing with sightings. The first one was just like a family has a sighting and they have to deal with it. And then I started squeezing in all the trivial stories, like the tale around the campfires. And then the second one was Yeti or Not, which is introducing the ranger character who doesn't believe in any of it. He has to deal with it. He's got to do a follow-up report in the park, and he's pretty skeptical about it. And then a bunch of stuff happens, and then he has to deal with it. And then he has to take the red pill eventually. And then you have the third one, which is Operation Redwood Quest, which is, I brought up the environmental aspect. So you have this environmental group wanting to save the ancient forest by having this environmentalist dress in a suit and hoax Bigfoot encounters so they can save the forest and have it declared a wilderness area or a habitat. Then you have the timber industry, who doesn't like that idea, who finds these unemployed mill workers, drunks, and they pay them money to make it go away. You can imagine how much fun that is. Yeah. So that was the third book of the trilogy that I did. But those were written almost like 20 years ago. So I'm rewriting those differently because It's got some grammatical errors. It needs a little bit of work. So I'm rewriting those. And the goal for this year is to do like the Bigfoot mystery is to put it into an audiobook where I get my buddies to be the voices of the characters.
Oh boy.
And we record ourselves with the natural sounds. And it's just a dialogue of the book and the story. And I always thought it'd be fun as heck to do that. So Kip Morrill, remember that guy we talked about?
Yes, of course. 15 times. Now he's up to the 15-time Bigfoot of the Year award.
Yeah, I can't keep track. He does really well. I've actually had to share the honor with him this year.
Yes, I know. Well, you have to.
It was very nice of him to allow me to share.
Wow, you're lucky. You're lucky.
Yeah, I think so. So he's going to be the narrator. He's going to be the narrator voice. It's going to be fun. So that's a project we want to do, and it's different, but it's nice writing those books, and then being able to do something more with them, like just like the film site, where you find the film site, you prove it's the location, and then you say we're done, right? We walk away, but we're not done. The question that always comes up is, how tall was Patty? There's speculation measuring the foot, stack them up. Well, what size lens did they use? Was it a 15 millimeter? Was it a 20? Was it a 25? So we've been working on that a little bit with Rowdy Kelly and Daniel Perez and a bunch of other part of the group, where we built a little stand so we can stand on top of it at the approximate range position of Roger in 352. Because of the flooding in 64, putting that nice sandbar, and because the water does what it does, it erodes it away. The original spot where Roger was is about 6 feet beyond the edge of the upper sandbar.
Okay.
So if you want to stand in that position and duplicate the shot, we didn't want to stand on top of ladders in like a circus act, holding up Rowdy's legs while he's trying to film. So we built this platform so you could stand on it safely and be in that position. So we did this last fall, we did a little experimenting with the 15, 20, and 25. And we were able to put lights on the artifacts that are in 352, like the stumps and the trees. Mm-hmm. So from that distance, it's shadowy and there's trees in the way. But if you stand in a position where you can see all those stump artifacts with lights on them, you can pinpoint those positions. So you take 352, you lay it across the picture, and then you're talking about how big was Patty. So we needed more lights on the subject so we could see him. Mm-hmm. And then you can put them at 102 feet from Roger's position, 352 or 108. And then you can take those distances and see what the size might look like. So that's a fun exercise we're going to do this either starting the summer or this fall, because right now we don't know if it's 20 or it's 15, because there's a few other factors to figure out. And people have their speculations on height based on measurements of feet and distance and everything. But it'd be fun to actually do it at the site and just, instead of just guessing by foot and stacking it up, to actually be there and look at distances and figure out what size we have by distances. So Bobo, he wants to be a part of the team. We used him before. Finding Bigfoot used him. We used him in our big blowout in 2012 when Bill Munns was there. So he wants to be Patty. He wants to
play Patty.
He wants to be Patty. We have used Kip. Kip is 6'3", and he was a good subject. We used him in I think 2018, but he wants part of that too. So we have to fight over who gets to do it. I can't do it. I'm 5 foot.
So Robert,
and height wise, no, we need somebody that's got a better girth and height to do that. So it gives you an idea.
So Robert, what happens to the film site now? What happens to the film site now?
Well, it's still status quo. The stumps are starting to rot. I mean, they're pretty old. When you remove the protective vegetation that protects them and allows sunlight and wind and more moisture to get underneath those things, and then you allow people to go love it to death, where some will stand on them, some will sit on them, that kind of just destroys the artifacts over time. And it's like the parks. People love their parks, so they end up showing up. Like Sunset Magazine says, this is the 5th top 10 places to go visit. And they show up there, and everybody else does too. And now it's no longer in the top 10 places to visit because there's garbage. People trample the place down. And like Sunset Magazine would I'm going to digress just a little bit, but Sunset Magazine always asks us, hey, what are your top 10 places to see in the park? We go, oh, there are none. No, it's not worth your visit.
Yeah.
Because you give away your secrets. They want to know our secrets so they can trash it. So, So when people come to the site, it's their site. We don't own the site. We've kind of declared ourselves caretakers. We just went like this. Yeah, now you're caretakers. But we try to keep the trail accessible. We try to make sure it's going to be good. We try to help people find it. But we're not in charge of it. We just think we are, right?
Right.
So it is everybody. So we'd like to encourage people to be nice to it. Pack out your garbage. Don't have fires in the film site. You know, your fire ring and set it up on the upper sandbar. Let's not do that. There's places by the Peter Byrne location that's an old fire ring. It's got an old shoe. Oh, by the way, that shoe's been there for a long time. Please don't throw it in the bushes because we'll dig it out and put it back on the rocks. It's got moss growing on it. It's been there since I saw it in 2007.
Wow.
So it's an artifact.
Wow.
Well, you know, I tell you, Robert, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Really, I mean, we could go on and on, but I want to save some in the holster for next time you come. We promise you'll come back on?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. You know, so, you know, I'd like to thank our guest, Robert Leiterman, for coming out tonight. I'm back. There we go. For Gwen Purcell, I'm Brendon Brown, reminding you to stay safe and keep on squatching. Coming up on our next show, the next show will be next week. We're doing shows every week. We have Ryan RPG Golenbesk stopping by to talk the stranger side of the Bigfoot research with Mike and Chuck. So until then, thanks for tuning in, and we hope you all have a good night. So take care.
You've been watching From Behind Tall Trees, a Catskill Appalachian Research Collective production. For more information on this program and others like it, remember to like, share, and subscribe to C.A.R.C. Universal Today. To join the conversation on our Facebook group, become a member of the Catskill Appalachian Research Collective Facebook group. C.A.R.C. Relentless.